So Genetec is a software company that specializes in our unified platform. Unified platform meaning that we could bring in video surveillance video, we could bring in access control data, alarm data, like in grow facilities, a lot of times that we bring in other entities in our world. And then we also have license plate recognition. So we are a software company that's able to bring all these entities and be a lot more efficient, within a system. If you think about like a dispensary when owners need to just open up a location, a lot of times they'll take the path of least resistance and just we'll make sure that they're able to open up and start selling cannabis. Some of the challenges of it though is, the further they get along within business, they want to get more out of their system, which is where a lot of times that we come into play because we're able to do multiple disciplines. So with that, we're able to bring a lot more value to their security program and their systems in general. Like in a dispensary, you'll have a separate video system, and then you'll have a separate access control system, and then you'll have a separate alarm panel system. The value of our unified platform is we're able to bring in all of that and be able to manage it. Cultivation, it's a different format in the standpoint because, retail, for instance, you would have where it might be valuable to bring in all your transactional data into the software. When it hits cultivation though, you're more worried about people getting on the property. You have a lot more security constraints in the standpoint that you want to know how many people are coming in and out. Maybe look at vehicle traffic coming in and out, especially for deliveries. And then really it comes down to making sure that your video system and your access control system is able to provide all the reports that are needed, based on all the regulations that there are too. The nice thing about our program though, is we could be just like a single dispensary that might have, typically, there are at least like 20 cameras, but it could be a lot more depending on the size. But then there's also the aspect of a grow facility where the grow facility, you could have hundreds of cameras, you have hundreds of sensors, your security program is going to be a little bit more even, I would say, defined in a grow facility. But then a lot of our end users too, then want full visibility and management of it at one level, at the top level, to go down to all their locations. So they have the opportunity to take a look at all their dispensaries, the grow facilities, and look at all the alarm information and data that's coming through too. We could be very simple. So, a lot of times what happens is there'll be like an administrator level that they want to be able to see a lot more data like what we're showing in this screen. But then at a dispensary level, you want them to sell the product. They want, spend time with the customers. So a lot of time in a dispensary level, it's very, very simple. You have the option to look at video and whatever data that's coming across, but that's all that you do because we want to make sure that, you're taking care of the end users. Genetec, we taken the cybersecurity approach as a #1 priority many years ago, just because we knew when you're talking about all these network devices that are going on in a network, a lot of times it's not uncommon that a security system actually has more vulnerabilities on it versus like a computer aspect network. So we've taken it to the up-team approach in the standpoint of everything is encrypted from a device or an entity into our software. And then also in the standpoint of we have a hardening guide built right into our software. Unfortunately, a lot of the entry-level systems that are out there, they don't necessarily have a lot of proactive features in order to help alert, like if camera firmware isn't where it needs to be, or an access control panel isn't on the firmware that it should be. Because most time when there is a firmware update, it can be security related. When it comes to like a software option like what we are, we're a small piece of the project. So the reality of it is when you're buying a security system, you're buying cameras, installation of the cameras, the cabling, the alarm points, the access control readers, the access control panels. Our piece of that puzzle is not that big. We're typically about 10 to 15% of a total project. But the reality is that because we're able to do so much with our software, it comes down to education, I would say. The one thing that we've been getting a lot more interest in is, we're able to do a lot, but we like to say we always have to take a modular approach. You gotta, you start out with, our unified client, which is video and access control, get those up, and then you have all the compliance aspects of getting the reports that you need. We have what's called the IoT plugin. The IoT plugin is where we could bring in other systems into our software that typically will have a separate alerting aspect. It might be a separate software, it might be a separate mobile app or something of that standpoint. Yeah. But we're able to bring that data into our software, and therefore we could do the alert engine of what Security Center, which is our software, is able to do with the audit history. So I'd like to say that we're like building blocks. And with the IoT plugin, we're going to be able to bring in a lot of information. It could be energy management information. It could be fire alarm. A lot of times, like in a grow facility, there might not be someone there at night. It is very high secure, but there's not someone physically there. Where now we could bring in all these entities and like a fire system. It would be important to know that if something is happening at the grow facility, that you get alarmed. Most people know that some regulations you have to record on-site, but then you have to record off-site. We have all these features as a company, so we're able to, not only, record, on-premise at a certain length, but then it could be where I have one end user that wants to put the secondary video up in their cloud, or they could use us for our cloud. We do have a lot of cloud offerings also, which kind of helps out and where the roadmap's going, because a lot of security systems are going cloud, but the challenge of it is you got to be worried about potentially what the guidelines of the video and what the regulations are. So most times we see that you have to record video about 90 days on site. But then you have that secondary option. So in a Genetec standpoint, I like to say the value that we bring is we're able to do so much with our software. So you might not do it today, but you're going to potentially do it in the future.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for taking that.
No, thank you. Thank you very much.